Who will the Carolina Panthers select with all 9 of their picks in the 2025 NFL Draft? Well, I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching this show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because on Fridays throughout the offseason, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. And while there won't be a mailbag this Friday because the draft is going on and that takes precedence over the mailbag, we'll be back next week on May 2nd for a weekly Friday mailbag. So what you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers, and it is here. Some people have asked, not everyone, but some of you have asked for it, and it's back for a second straight year. The Locked On Panthers mock draft, my one and only mock draft, is here now on the show. I use ESPN's mock draft generator this year instead of PFF's. I tried to use PFF's like I did last year, but I kept putting in the draft, kept changing up things, and they kept not selecting Cam Ward number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. So if you have a mock draft that's not selecting Cam Ward to the Titans, I don't really know what we're doing here as far as a mock draft generator. You can try to toggle it and change it as much as you can. Whatever's going on there at PFF, who love them, do a great job, reference their stuff all the time on the show. Trevor Sycamore, so great to come on a couple weeks ago. I couldn't get it to work. So maybe it's me. I don't know, but I use ESPN's mock draft generator this year. And when looking at the picks ahead of Carolina, which is very key when it comes to Thursday night and the option the Panthers are going to have, it looks pretty close to what I think may happen. Cam Ward, number 1 to the Titans. Number 2, they had Travis Hunter going to the Cleveland Browns, which should be the case. Number 3, the Giants not taking quarterback, instead taking Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. At 4, this one was weird to me. They had the Pats taking Mason Graham instead of Will Campbell, but Will Campbell did go off the board with the next pick. Jacksonville taking Will Campbell 5th overall. I'd probably flip-flop those in reality when we actually get to Thursday, but as far as the mock draft that I was using went, they had Graham going to the Patriots and then Campbell going to the Jags. Then at 6, Jalen Walker, who's been the popular pick in Carolina. There's been some talk that maybe he goes earlier than 8 and won't be on the board for the Panthers. He went 6th overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. And then 7th overall, Armand Membu, the offensive tackle out of Missouri, who's been linked to the Jets recently. He goes 7th overall to the Jets. So Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, Will Campbell, Jalen Walker, Armand Membu, all those guys off the board. And if we get to Thursday night, and that's the case, I would not be surprised at all. But that would mean the Panthers would have to decide what they want to do. And I'm of the belief that they would love to draft someone like Jalen Walker, like Mason Graham. And if they're not on the board, then you wonder, do they take Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona? Are they interested potentially in grabbing an edge rusher right then and there? Or do they think there's better positional value later on in the draft? And tomorrow, I talked to Mike Kay, the Charlotte Observer, actually recorded that on Monday or Sunday night, whatever it was. So I had a conversation with Mike about what Carolina may be doing and their kind of thought process there sitting at 8. And there's probably a collection of 3 guys that they would want to get, but it depends upon what happens in front of them. And I would think that 2 of those 3 are probably Mason Graham and Jalen Walker. But is that 3rd someone that they feel like is worth taking at 8th overall? Maybe, but if they can trade back and find a sucker, then that's probably the best scenario. And it does feel like Carolina, and it was mentioned by Adam Schefter, was brought up really last week, and Dan Morgan was asked about it. Mike Kay is going to talk about it tomorrow. It feels like they want to trade back, that they do not want to stay at 8th overall. And the great thing about using a mock draft generator is you can go ahead and ram in a trade whenever you want to and make it happen. But one of the teams spoiler alert, that Mike brings up on tomorrow's show is the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, it's Dallas. Jerry Jones always trying to move up, trying to make moves, bring in a flashy name to that organization. Dallas is a team that I would think would want to move up, especially in order to get the guy that they want in an Ashton Genty, a running back, I would think, maybe even a wide receiver. Now, in this mock draft, the Cowboys did take a wide receiver there at 8 because I traded back. I moved from 8th to 12th overall. I gave up 57th overall and moved up earlier in the second round to 44th overall. So pick swaps there in the first and second round. Then needed to pick something up there. ESPN said that was good enough. No, not good enough for me. I decided Dallas, I'm going to need another pick in the top 100. Got pick 76 there in the third round. So traded 8 and 57, got back 12. 44 and 76, adding another pick there into the top 100, and decided with the 12th overall pick to take an edge rusher that we're going to talk about a lot tomorrow with Mike K, but an edge rusher that I think a lot of y'all fell in love because of what Trevor Sikkema had to say. And a guy I quite honestly don't understand why he's not considered a top 10 talent based off of what he did last year and what he did throughout his career at Boston College, and that is, of course, Donovan Ezeraku, the edge rusher from BC. I take him 12th overall, and I think he fits in perfectly to Carolina, a guy who was a great leader at Boston College, had great production, and in a edge rusher class where you look at Michael Williams, the production wasn't really there. Shamar Stewart, the production absolutely was not there at all, even in the big moments where you saw Williams, at least against Texas, stepped up against NFL talent in Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams. We did not see that at all from Shamar Stewart when he played against Texas to end the season. Mike Green, a lot of issues off the field where he may drop pretty big on Thursday night. Just letting y'all know that right now. A lot of production, but did it in the Sun Belt after leaving Virginia. I'm taking Donovan Ezeraku there, 12th overall for Carolina after trading back with Dallas. And now in the second round, looking at day 2 of the draft, the Panthers are going to be drafting 44th instead of 57th, which opens up the possibility of, I think, getting another key player who can come in and who could potentially start right away. And I heard Daniel Jeremiah was on with Ryan Marcillo on his podcast and Todd McShay, and he was talking about that this is a starters draft, not a stars draft. You can get 3 to 4 good starters. You should be happy about that. I would feel that's probably most drafts anyways, but especially looking at this 2025 NFL draft, he feels like it's a starters draft, not necessarily a stars draft. But there's one guy I've heard a lot about, positively speaking, recently at that wide receiver position who could fit in perfectly to Carolina and what they need. What they need right now, I think, is a wide receiver 1. But Dave Canales says, no, they've got that guy in Xavier Legette. They had Jalen Coker, who's a nice piece, who's going to have to continue to fight for that role. But he's right now penciled in as a starter again this upcoming season. David Moore is going to get an opportunity in Carolina. And then, of course, Adam Thielen, age 35 season, likely his last season in the NFL. He's playing that slot. And Carolina is going to need to upgrade that position down the road, and not just upgrade, really replace Thielen, but also add some speed. And a guy who I think can replace Thielen, add speed, and maybe down the road even be an upgrade at that spot is Jalen Knoll, the wide receiver from Iowa State, who I took 44th overall. He last year was the Big 12 co-special teams player of the year. First team all Big 12 as well. He was honorable mention all Big 12 wide receiver, looking at different outlets, whatever. But he ranked 9th in the FBS last season with 1,194 yards, had 80 receptions, 14.9 yards per reception, 8 touchdowns. A guy who can be a good kick returner, and that's what Carolina's looking for. I know they have Raheem Blackshear coming back, but he didn't rate very highly as far as in the league last year when it came to kickoff returns. You could have Noel do that. You could potentially have Legette do it. He could be a punt returner for you, someone who can come in, add speed, but also add special teams ability his first year. Then in 2026, once Thielen's likely gone, he can be that clear replacement and can be that slot guy there for Carolina with Jalen Coker and with Xavier Legette as your young receiving core moving forward around Bryce Young. So second round, 44th pick overall, which I got in that trade back with Dallas, moving up from 57 to 44 on day 2 in the second round, taking Jalen Knoll, the wide receiver from Iowa State. So those are my first 2 picks. What about the rest of the picks I have there on day 2 and early day 3? I'll talk about those here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Game Time's all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The first two picks are in for the 2025 Locked On Panthers mock draft. Donovan Ezeraku going 12th overall to the Panthers after a trade back with Dallas, and then Jalen Noel, who was a part of that deal. Carolina getting 44 and giving Dallas 57. The wide receiver from Iowa State adding speed and a future replacement there in the slot for Adam Thielen, who's likely retiring after this 2025 season. But a couple more picks there on day 2, and then a couple picks to begin day 3. I want to go over here with y'all now on this mock draft. Looking at pick 74, that was the extra pick I wanted to pick up from Dallas. ESPN said, no, it's fine. 8 and 57 for 12 and 44. That's fair. No. Draft night, got to get a little bit more, and wanted to add another pick there in that top 70, that top 100, and I got pick 76. 74 actually what Carolina already owned. But with pick 74, we've had the conversation about what's the future hold for Taylor Moton in Carolina. Will he be back again in 2026? The Panthers extend him. They're fine, apparently sitting on that $31.3 million cap hit. They could have extended him and cleared up nearly $13 million. They could have restructured for the 4th straight offseason and opened up $12 million. They could have cut him if they wanted to, which I don't think would have really helped the team out at all. But Taylor Moton's coming back for another season, and there's some concerns about that knee as they had to manage his body a lot last offseason. He picked up some injuries for the first time in his career, causing him to miss time. But overall, and by default, in somewhat of a case, he has been the best and most consistent offensive lineman for the Panthers over the last couple of years. And they went all in last offseason and bringing Robert Hunt, bringing Damian Lewis, moving Austin Corbett to center to make this a better, more cohesive unit for the Panthers last season. And it worked out. As the sack numbers dropped, the offensive line was highly rated when it came to run blocking by PFF and even pass blocking. ESPN didn't really love them as far as the pass rush or pass block win rate goes. Either way, everyone with eyes and who has monitored this Carolina Panthers offensive line situation over the last couple of years knows that that offensive unit was much better than it was in the year prior and even years before that. So now all those guys are coming back. Hunt will be back again next season. Damian Lewis, you would expect to be back again next season. Ike Ekwonu, whether it's going to be the 5th-year option or an extension this offseason, he should be back. The only questions remain will be center, where Austin Corbett and Cade Mays, and I suppose Brady Christensen as well, are all battling for that spot to start this season and become the future for Carolina. And in that right tackle, with Taylor Moton being a free agent next year, is it time to look for his replacement? A couple of years ago, when Moton was drafted, different regime, of course, the Panthers brought him in to be a backup. And then with the idea that after a year of redshirting, so to speak, he would then be the starter. Might Dan Morgan and this organization now decide to do the exact same thing? I think it's a possibility. And based off of how the board fell for me, one of the top players left on the board was Ozzie Trapillo, an offensive tackle from Boston College, who the Panthers went up to see at BC's Pro Day, who also they took a guy from BC and Donovan Ezeraku. At least I did there with the 12th overall pick there in the first round. Why not take a player who was a good player, already in like an NFL type of college program with Bill O'Brien now being up there in Chestnut Hill? Why not take him as a replacement for Moton, have him learn, and then be the guy in 2026? So I'm taking, with that the 74th overall pick right there in the 3rd round, Ozzie Trapillo, offensive tackle from Boston College, to be the eventual replacement to Taylor Moton. Now, let's go back a couple more picks as the Panthers back on the clock at 76. They're in the third round. They need a corner, in my opinion. I know there's guys like a Caleb Evans, not Caleb Farley. I had somebody ask me, like, are you sure you're not saying meaning Caleb Farley? No, Caleb Evans. It's like AKALEY. The way he spells his name is certainly unique. A Caleb Evans started week 18 on the road in Atlanta, got hurt. Shamar Bartholomew, who they were able to get off of waivers when they did all that waiver wire hunting after cutdown day, he didn't really do anything all year. He was kind of like a redshirt year kind of guy, and then had to step in there in the finale in week 18 in Atlanta. The Panthers like those two guys, which is great. I still feel like they should try to add another piece out there at that outside corner spot. You got JC, you got Mike Jackson. Why not bring in a younger guy? And they have not been all that busy when it comes to the top 30 visits and bringing in corners, even with some of the pro days, local days, all that they've had. But one guy they did talk to, who was outstanding the last couple of years in the ACC at Louisville, is Quincy Riley. And I'm thinking Quincy Riley with the 76 pick, came in for that top 30, adds another outside corner, was second team all ACC this past year, led the team with 13 pass breakups, also had 2 interceptions. I do think he fits the bill what Carolina's looking for, that physicality, maybe not the tallest. He's listed at 5'11", but does have some good arm length. I think he fits in with JC and also Mike Jackson as that number 3 corner who can develop and maybe be a starter down the road. So I'm taking him to close out day 2 of the NFL draft. Looking at day 3 early on for Carolina, I haven't got a tight end, haven't gotten a safety, some other spots that you would think would make sense for the Panthers. I'm not focused on that with my first pick. There's a guy I had told you about a couple of days ago during the mailbag. Someone's asked me about running back. If there's anybody who could potentially be a day 3 pick who you'd absolutely love to have. And I told them Dylan Sampson. And what do you know? When I'm doing this mock draft, who's still on the board? Who's one of the highest players listed? Maybe even the highest player listed on the board when I come up, other than Tennessee's Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, set a Tennessee record. And significant, if you know the history of the University of Tennessee's football program, record single season touchdowns, rushing yards. He was their offense. Nico Iamaleava was not good at Tennessee last year. It was Dylan Sampson in the defense that carried them to the playoff. And Dylan Sampson is a kind of dude who is a dog who would fit perfectly here. And knowing with Jonathan Brooks that he's probably going to miss the majority of the season, and not knowing who he's going to be coming off of a second ACL tear in that same knee once he eventually does come back to Carolina in all likelihood in 2026, I want to go get somebody else who has been a productive back, and a back who was a 1,000-yard rusher back in 23, did it again in 2024. I don't think there's a ton of mileage on Dylan Sampson. Maybe over the last 2 years, he's picked up a decent amount of knocks on his body, but a guy who is durable. I would love to see Dylan Sampson come in here to be a third down back, be a guy that can bring in also any other down to fit in with Rico Dowdle, fit in with Chuba, and be that insurance in case things don't work out with Jonathan Brooks down the road. So with the 111th pick in this draft, I'm taking Dylan Sampson, the running back from Tennessee. Go back a couple more picks. We're on the board again at 114, and the Panthers, they got to get a safety, right? And you're probably yelling at me right now, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening in your car. Please try not to wreck your car while listening to me. I know that's probably a daily struggle for those who do listen in the car to Locked On Panthers. Thank you for the support, but also stay safe out there, listen to your boy, which, again, probably drives you nuts, but they got to get a safety. And I do think they're probably going to circle back to a Julian Blackmon or to a Marcus Williams, maybe even both after the draft is going on. Those are guys who likely want to just see what the real option is going to be. A team may have signed them, but then if they go and draft somebody, because they could tell you, oh, yeah, we want you to play this role, but if they get to the draft, it's like, well, we didn't expect this guy to be on the board. We're going to bring him in. And hell, if it happened to Kirk Cousins, who got a ton of money last year in Atlanta, it can happen to Julian Blackmon or Marcus Williams or any of the other safeties that are currently available. So why not wait and see what happens in the draft? But Dan Morgan knows that they're thin there. They have 3 guys, Trevon Merrick, they have Damani Richardson, and then they have Nick Scott. Nick Scott, you probably don't want playing any snaps for you defensively this upcoming season, unless it's just garbage time and he won that game. Damani Richardson, I think they like him, going to give him an opportunity, but you need to add another piece there. And then Trevon Merrick, obviously going to be a starter, going to be a key piece of this defense. there's another guy that they liked who was a first-team All-ACC player last year, led UVA with 98 tackles, which just tells you how bad that defense was, that they need to have their safety be their leading tackler, had 8.5 tackles for loss, adding sure tackling, adding a nice big body there. I think that makes sense. So I'm going to take Jonas Sanker, the safety from Virginia, with the 114th pick there in the 4th round. Let's go down to the 5th round. Well, actually, no, let's take a quick pause. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll go look at the Panthers' 2 picks there in the 5th round, the 3 picks in the 5th round, rather, and their 7th round pick. Do I go special teams or not? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Play high-quality Xbox games at the fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. 6 picks are in for the Carolina Panthers in the 2025 Locked On Panthers mock draft. Donovan Ezeraku going 12th overall after a trade back with Dallas. Jalen Noel going 44th overall, part of that deal with Dallas moving up earlier into the 2nd round as a wide receiver out of Iowa State. Ozzie Trapillo, offensive tackle out of Boston College, future Taylor Moton replacement. He's in with the 74th overall pick, 76th overall, Quincy Riley, corner from Louisville. Dylan Sampson, Jonas Sanker, both taken there in the 4th round. Now looking at the 5th round, the Panthers have 3 picks in the 5th round, pick 140, 146, and 163. When discussing safety over the last couple of weeks, there's been conversation, even when they were going through free agency, about double dipping. And the Panthers did not double dip. They did circle back on Javon Holland. He ends up signing with the Giants, not here in Carolina. They have Trevon Merrick, and that was it as far as free agency goes. And you can count Nick Scott as he was technically a free agent, but a guy that they were able to retain during the free agency period. What about double dipping at safety in the draft and adding a different body type, but another player who was an absolute dog for their team last year and probably, maybe not probably, one of the best defensive players on their team? And that guy I'm looking at with that 140th pick in the 5th round is Billy Bowman, the safety from Oklahoma, 3rd-team All-SEC last year, started all 12 games. The Sooners played, well, I guess he didn't play in a bowl game, but started 12 games for the Sooners last year, and would add another young safety, a little bit smaller in stature. So you wonder, could he play in the box? Would he be someone that you'd want to be your primary option? Maybe not, but has the versatility to be able to play nickel. And Shaw Smith-Wade got that opportunity last year as a 5th rounder. Why not add competition, or it's another young body there, someone who can be versatile in this defense? I like Billy Bowman, the safety from Oklahoma there, with pick 140. Now, looking at pick 146, haven't got a tight end. And I think that's a spot maybe Carolina should be interested in. But when I was looking at it, there weren't guys that I loved. And going back to double dipping, is it ever a bad thing to double dip and get 2 guys on the defensive line? I don't think so. So with pick 146, I'm getting a guy who is really good back in 23. Matter of fact, he was 1st-team All-ACC. He had 14.5 tackles for loss and 11 sacks. Then last year, wasn't as good, but was still 2nd-team All-ACC, 10 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. Who is this player? I'm talking about Aston Gelati, the edge rusher from Louisville, menace in 23, good player last year as teams were really focused on him. That is somebody who I think can really make a lot of sense there as another edge rusher who can come in once DJ Johnson's probably off the roster, once Clowney maybe retires after the season, a young guy who fits, I think, into whether it's a 4-3 or a 3-4 scheme. And looking at what Lance Sirlein of the NFL Network had to say has me interested even more in Gelati, a player who, just with my own eyes over the last couple of years watching college football in the fall, is someone who I like. Saying productive and experience in production, big deal, where he's been far more productive than a guy like Shamar Stewart, yet we got him going in the 5th round here. Gelati shines with his ability to threaten the pocket. His rush isn't overly complicated, but he can collapse the pocket with power, be up the edge with violent hands, and sneak past guards with snap quickness when playing inside. He's powerful, but doesn't have a solid anchor to hold his ground as a run defender. He's graded, Gelati, as a 4-3 defensive end, but he has the athletic ability to stand up and play 3-4 outside backer. It's a difficult situation for the Panthers to be in a way, not knowing what the future holds for Ejiro Evero and what this scheme's going to be past this season. And of course, Ejiro is going to have a say in who he likes and who he does not like. And there's one guy out there who we've been talking a lot about. I'm not going to say who it is, who maybe he's not that big of a fan of. We'll have to see come Thursday or Friday, whenever it's going to be, if that player will in fact be a Panther. But looking at Gelati, whether it's Ejiro or it's somebody else, whether it's 3-4, 4-3, apparently has versatility and has shown the power and explosiveness to come out there and to play at that spot. So I like him as probably more of a developmental guy, but he's still an older prospect who has been able to produce at that P4 level over the last couple of years. Looking at the final pick there in the 5th round, pick 163, I wanted to get a linebacker. I wanted to add to that group as Josie Jewell, probably last year in Carolina, maybe comes back again next season. But if Jero's not back in 26, hard to believe that Jewell will be back in 2026. Same thing, Christian Roseboom, 1 year kind of proposition for him to come in and compete for a job. So those two likely not here in 26. Trevin Wallace should again be back in a starting role, which means you need to find a linebacker for the future who could team up or at least be that third backer, be a nice backup down the road, but could maybe start next season, but certainly would be a backup in that role this year. And why not get a player off of the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, the Ohio State Buckeyes, as far as what they were able to do last year, and a guy who's a team leader. And I'm taking Cody Simon, the linebacker from Ohio State, 3rd team All Big Ten last year, led the team with 112 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, had 7 sacks, and going to what Lance Zierlein had to say, just shorten what he had to say. He said Simon has enough talent for 3-down consideration and should be able to help on special teams until he proves he's ready to go from backup to starter. And that's typically what these day 3 guys are going to be, is special teamers who can then develop into starters. So I like Cody Simon as a guy who can come in, be a nice, good presence for the Panthers, maybe a leader down the road, and possibly your starter at linebacker, maybe your 3rd linebacker. But I like Cody Simon, who was really good at Ohio State this past year with that pick 163. So that's 9 picks, but I added another pick. So we have 10 picks in this mock draft. And the final pick, looking in the 7th round at pick 230. At this point in time, I would have a hard time believing that whoever gets picked in the 7th round, if they're a position player, is likely to make the roster. Probably not going to happen. But if they're a special teamer, do think that there's a better chance because the Panthers would have spent capital to get that player. And the guy who I'm looking at, who's on the board as a kicker, who I thought was really good over the last couple of years at Miami, is Andres Borregales. Looking right now, Carolina, they only have Matthew Wright. Eddie Pinheiro is still a free agent as of this recording. The Panthers could circle back there if they wanted to, but I do think they want to get younger at kicker. So I'm going to draft Andres Borregales, kicker from Miami, with pick 230 in my mock draft. So going back through the mock draft, all 10 of the picks traded back with Dallas, got to pick 12, Donovan Ezeraku, edge rusher from Boston College, picked up pick 44 when trading with Dallas, got Jalen Knoll, the wide receiver from Iowa State. Then pick 74, Ozzie Trapillo, the offensive tackle from Boston College. Pick 76, which I got with that trade from Dallas, Quincy Riley, the cornerback from Louisville. Then looking in the 4th round, 111, Dalen Sampson, the running back from Tennessee. 114, Jonas Sanker, the safety from Virginia. Looking in the 5th round, all 3 of the picks. 140, Billy Bowman, safety from Oklahoma. 146, Ashton Gelati, the edge from Louisville. And 163, Cody Simon, the linebacker from the Ohio State. And then 230, Andres Borregales, the kicker from the University of Miami. Those are the 10 picks in the 2025 Carolina Locked On Panthers mock draft. Let me know over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council what you think about those picks. Also, let me know here in the comments on YouTube if you're watching what you think about that and who you like and potentially your mock draft, what it looks like. So send those over to me wherever you want to. All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to check me out over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because I'll be back next Friday answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me on Twitter or at me on Blue Sky to get those questions in for next week's edition of the mailbag. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And on tomorrow's show, Mike K from the Charlotte Observer helping us break down the 2025 NFL Draft for your Carolina Panthers.